Exactly.
But here's the thing that, especially all these finger quote real Americans, who support Trump, if you're really that American, you should know that we don't take kindly to royalty. Other countries can have it. That's fine. We're good with that. But we kind of fought this whole war and formed a country because we didn't want to have a king.
Right.
If you don't remember that, get yourself on the Google or just go straight to the YouTube. Look up Schoolhouse Rock, No More Kings.
Right.
It's right there. And it's in cartoon and song form, so it'll be really easy for you to take in. It's written at a third grade level, so you might want to get someone to help you with some of the bigger words and concepts. But so if Trump is turning himself into our monarch, we don't need that. The American taxpayers don't need to pay for it. That would be this whole taxation without representation. I don't remember the name of the song. Well, no, No More Kings was the one. Yeah. So the Tea Party and and I realize of you again, finger quote, real Americans. A lot of you supported the war to dissolve this country that was formed by the people who didn't want any kings, but you lost. And America persisted. And America will continue to persist despite all of your efforts to form your own, CSA, your cracker states of America.
What? Cracker
Yeah,
states?
I got into an argument with someone on Twitter. They took offense to me using the term cracker. They said, "Isn't that a racist term?" I said, "You know what? Ask the people who own the Cracker Barrel and all the white people who eat there. Pretty sure they don't think it's a racist term. I'm going to go with them rather than some angry person who can't spell at me on Twitter.
It's right up there with redneck and honky. It's right up there.
I miss honky.
I
hear
do.
it enough.
It's.
Do they still?
I got to ask, and not hey, you're black, you might know this, but what is the etymology of honky? That's the I'm really big into where words come from and what they mean, and the closest to anything that sounded like it might be true that I've ever heard, but it's so ridiculous it can't be true, is that because white people had cars and black people didn't, they had the horns and they were honking at them, so honkies. That sounds so ridiculously stupid, I figure that can't be true.
I really don't know the history of honky.
I assumed it was from honky tonk, but I don't know what honky tonk where that derives from. So, yeah. Sorry, Tymon.
I don't know. That's right up there with Peckerhead and Peckerwood, and that's right. That's right up there with that.
It's funny. Just to go totally off topic, but we got three comedians in a room, and we start talking about racial epithets. We don't, how can we not go into this on a conversation? Now, Josh, you're from up north, San Francisco area.
Yes.
Born and bred. I'm from Chicago. And I know you're a little bit younger, but do you remember the whole, the big stink? I think it was in the early 80s, correct me if I'm wrong, Tymon, when, was it Jesse Jackson or was it Al Sharpton that referred to New York as Jaime Town?
It was...
that was Jesse, wasn't it? Yeah.
Jesse, yeah.
Now, I believe me, growing up in the Midwest as a Jew, I thought I had heard every racial epithet directed at our people. And then this whole Jaime Town thing came up, and I had never heard that before. I still think it's hilarious.
I mean,
now what is Jaime Town?
It was he was referring to New York as being run by the Jews,
right?
And I guess because Hyman was a if not popular, common Jewish name turn of the century back when a lot of us were coming over from Eastern Europe. I guess somewhere in there, Jaime became a racial epithet to be used against Jews. But I I don't think it made it as far west as Chicago in the 70s. I honestly never heard it until that whole thing.
Well, you were also probably a kid, right? I mean,
well, yeah, but that didn't, preclude people from calling me, kike and, what have you,
Right.
One of my favorite scenes in a movie in Life of Brian, when Graham Chapman is just unleashing, oh yes, I'm one of them. I'm a Red Sea pedestrian. I'm a hook-nosed Hebe, and just like going on, and it was brilliant, and so many people, say, well, black people can use the N-word. They're taking it back, and so I understand. I'm still not going to use it as evidence by calling it, by its initial, but I do think to an extent, people in the right context using these words, it does take the power away from them. It does show, you can call me all these names and I don't care. But there was, back in the old days when we were doing the cause effect, there was a conservative Jewish panelist who got very offended by my use of the term Jaime in a joke.
Wow.
Called me a self-hating Jew, which those are two things that are true, but not related to each other. I have plenty of reasons to hate myself that have nothing at all to do with my faith.
That's really funny. Well, also, I should clarify, Jaime Town is not a song by Lips Inc. Totally, that's a different...
Won't you take me to?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, it's funny you're mentioning this because I just saw this past week the Clint Eastwood film Gran Torino, which I'd never seen before.
And I've never been called a Gran Torino before either.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah.
You haven't seen this movie, have you?
I have not, but I know about it. It's Clint Eastwood's Get Off My Lawn.
Exactly. I honestly believe Clint Eastwood made this movie so that he could use every obscure racial epithet. I mean, he was busting out Asian racial terms that I've never heard before, and in his
so
growly,
it's an educational film.
It really is. It really is. Oh my God! It was such a Trumpian film.
Now I almost it's like a car wreck. I want to see it, but I really don't want to see it now. I'm really torn by that review you just gave.
No, it's delightful.
Well, it's like when Clint got Spike Lee came out against Clint when he was doing the one war flick and says, "Where are the brothers? There were black people there," and the only thing Clint would say to him, "Shut up." Just shut up, man. Like you trying to call me a racist is,
Well, and also, did you ever see Bird?
Yes.
Clint Eastwood directed, Charlie Parker biopic, Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah,
there were a few black people in that.
Yeah, but he's a huge
honestly,
jazz fan.
except for the actress who played Charlie Parker's wife and the actor who played Red Rodney, the trumpet player, I can't think of any white people in that movie. So, some movie, and I'm not here to defend Clint Eastwood. That check hasn't come yet either. So, Clint, a lot of zeros before the decimal, and we'll talk.
Well, he's busy talking to that chair.
Yeah,
so.
It's I guess he's always been there politically, but a lot of people didn't know it. Like they just assumed somewhere along the line he took a right turn. Clyde, hey,
nice
reference. So we're talking about. I feel like I'm about to rip Tim Meadows off. It's 3:32 in the morning, and you're listening to Perspectives. We're talking about racial epithets. But I did refer to the godless commies that brought us Labor Day and labor unions. But they're not all godless commies are good, and pinkos, whatever else you want to call them. The Russians have been in the news a bit lately, not so much because of the floods, but in several ways, way back in the news this week. And man, I really don't think Donald Trump is a religious man, let alone a praying man. But after the news coverage ratio this week to Russia versus Harvey, I bet Donald Trump is going to be praying for a hurricane every week for the rest of his, please God, may it be short term in office. But let's just start with his phone call to Chuck Grassley earlier this week, because I think that's a good starting point to get into where everything else is sort of going. But Chuck Grassley, senator from Iowa, head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, who is investigating Russian interference with our last election. And the Senate Judiciary Committee has a very special hearing planned for next week with special guest star Donald Trump Jr. So just a coincidence, I'm sure, that Donald Trump called Chuck Grassley this week to let him know that as president, he is really, really in favor of ethanol and ethanol subsidies. Chuck should tell the people of Iowa that Donald Trump backs ethanol 110%. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that Junior is testifying in front of the committee. Maybe it has something to do with the committee, that, Trump realized that Chuck Grassley heads that committee and they're investigating the Russia collusion and interference. And he thought, man, am I going to get cornholed on that? Corn, ethanol. Hey, I should call Chuck.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is that for someone who's supposed to be sort of Machiavellian, he's so bad at this chess game of like to do something so obvious as that, where there's a record of it. It is essentially the same as firing Comey and then going on NBC News and saying, yes, I fired him because of the Russia investigation. He is the opposite of Machiavellian. He's so obvious in his moves.
Right.
Everyone else is playing checkers and he's playing tic-tac-toe.
And he's losing, which is frightening. Do you remember the scene? I'm just big with all the movie references today, but in Mel Brooks's High Anxiety, when they have to, the police are looking for him, and he's with Madeline Kahn, and they need to get through the airport security.
Psychologically, the way to be invisible is to be as obvious as possible. That's what you're talking about, right?
That is exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. So, he dresses up like an old Jewish man. He's got notices he's got a gun in his belt as he's going through the security. Goes to the metal detector, it beeps, and he just full on Mel Brooks, old Jew. I beeped. Oh no! Take me away! Take me to the camps! I beeped. It's a crime to beep. And it's such a brilliant scene. But yeah, Trump, not Machiavellian at all. He's really bad at the smart stuff.
Right.
But it being so big that it distracts everyone from the details, he's really, really good at that.
The good thing of that damn movie was when Harvey Korman and the guy was the werewolf.
That was High Anxiety.
Where
he keeps putting the sharp teeth in his mouth.
And he shot him
with the paper clip. Yeah.
I was howling. Oh my God.
That's a great movie.
No, I got it.
I don't got it.
Here's your paper. Here's your goddamn newspaper.
You know who that was with the newspaper?
No.
A very, very young Barry Levinson.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Folks, if you haven't seen High Anxiety, Mel Brooks takes on Alfred Hitchcock films. It is genius. It's
so good. Madeline Kahn, Cloris
Leachman
as Nurse Diesel.
And when she had him tied up in the room and was beating him. If you would not be speaking, you're hurting me. Oh, you're hurting me. Quit your complaining. Take it like a man. Then beat him.
I feel like we should just do movie recaps.
Sometimes it is a holiday weekend, and B, between everything with the fires here, the floods in Texas and Louisiana, the shitstorm in D.C., sometimes you do need to take a little mental break.
True.
So we've got the call to Grassley, and now this is great. Mueller, when I was a kid, And still, I don't really buy comic books anymore, but always love the Marvel team-ups. You know, it'd be like, you know, everybody takes it for granted nowadays because the Avengers movies and the whole Marvel Universe film franchise